Ceiling tiles in most backrooms renders I come across always seem to kind of lack in their looks and stylization. Well, luckily enough, I built a tool just for that. If you click on the link in the description, you'll find my free procedural shader tiles, which you can use in your renders. All you have to do is enter a price. You can really put anything here. You can just put 0 if you don't want to pay. Get, and here we are. This looks pretty complicated, but in this video I'm going to be explaining everything that's behind these shader tiles. When you open the Blender file, you're going to see something that looks like this. To actually see this ceiling tiles, what we can do is we can just go into material preview, and they're right here. So here's what they look like. They are modeled after the textures.com texture, which is seen in a lot of backrooms videos nowadays, including Kane's found footage. Let's go into rendered mode. Now, while these do look pretty good right now, we can actually add a lot more to these textures. They're procedural, they're not just a stagnant texture. So if we open the shader editor, we have the whole shader here, which has everything you will need to customize these procedural tiles. Let's just go over each section. General. The general panel holds features which control the entirety of the procedural tiles. This panel holds things like the global randomization seed, the tint, and how you can scale the tiles. Below the scale, you'll find the roughness, which controls how rough the tiles react to light. Below that is age. When it's lower, the tiles look cleaner. When it's higher, the tiles look more dirty and dingy. Below age is center sync, which controls how much the center of the tiles dips down. This is most visible when the normal strength is turned up, or when the 3D lighting strength is increased. Frame. Frame controls features relating to the frame of the tiles. Things like the tint, the width of the frame, and how long the tiles are can be found here. For example, increasing the tile length to 2 makes the tiles, well, 2 tiles long. The metallic strength controls how much the frame generates a metallic. The default is set to 0 because the original texture that this is based off of doesn't have a metallic. Wall detection as a feature is the most finicky part about this setup. When turned on, you can notice a couple things change. First of all, the normals on the entire material are turned off. This is due to the fact that the wall detection method makes some weird artifacts with the normals. So because of that, I just turn off the normals. Something you might have also noticed is sometimes it will not generate. This can be caused from many issues, but the main one that might be the problem is the ceiling is joined to the wall mesh. To fix this, what you want to do is you want to go into edit mode, go into face selection, you want to find your ceiling, press P, click selection, and now your ceiling tiles are a separate object. Tile. The tile panel relates to all the settings you will need to affect the tiles. In here you'll find the tint and the pattern used on the tiles. The pattern comes with a couple preset options, like the original textures.com texture, the directional preset, web, pinhole, and a custom setup so you can make your own. All of these presets have different settings which you can affect individually, like directional, which has these little fissures, which you can change their direction. Below those settings, you'll find a tiny little sub-panel called missing tiles. This is where you can change whether a tiles appear or not. By default, this will be set to random, which will randomly poke out the ceiling tiles. When it's set to closure, this is our custom option. Why didn't I just name it custom? What is wrong with me, bro? When it's set to closure, you can use a custom closure to define how the tiles are plucked out. The maintain lights feature relates to the light setting, which we will get into eventually. When maintain lights is turned on, that means it won't pluck out tiles which have lights in them. Age. These settings refer to the age setting in the general panel. All the settings are pretty self-explanatory, except for gunk noise size, but that just affects the gunk around the edges of the tiles. Lights. The light panel refers to automatic light generation. These lights can be generated in all sorts of ways. The default is set to arranged, which you can define through using these numbers here. In the individual subpanel, we have a bunch of settings which refer to the individual lights themselves. This is where you can find settings such as having the lights be on or off, the tint of the lights, the temperature of the lights, the brightness of the lights, the angle of the light coming out of the lights, how many bulbs there are in the light, and a bunch of other miscellaneous settings. Now when it refers to temperature, it refers to Kelvin blackbody temperature, which you may not know, but I'm going to explain it to you here. When temperature is set to something like 1000, it makes things way more red. When temperature is set to something like 10,000, it makes things kind of cool. Typically, for pure white, what you want to set it to is 6500. For my backrooms renders, I usually set it to something like 4500, which is how I can get slightly more orange colors out of the lights. Angle just refers to how direct the light coming out of the lights are. Having the angle lower makes the lights more like a spotlight, while having it at something like 180 is more similar to just having a plain emission. Bulbs relates to the individual bulbs which are in each of the lights, which can be seen if the brightness is set low or if the exposure is turned down. You might not see anything when you do this, and that's just due to the fact that our diffuser strength is set to 1. If we set it to 0, that'll make the bulbs visible. Rotated simply refers to the direction that the bulbs are facing. Embed map just relates to how the lights are placed into the individual passes, which you can export separately. The 3D effect, best seen if you look at it at an angle, is visible like this. The offset just refers to how far the bulbs look from the surface, and I'd recommend setting the diffuser strength up higher to be more realistic. You may be slightly confused why we're going over the 3D panel again, but this panel relates to something that's entirely different from the 3D effects on the lights. When turned on, you will see that now the tiles have this 3D effect. Depending on how powerful your computer is, this effect can be really resource intensive, so use it sparingly. The quality relates to how many samples or individual slices are used to create the 3D effect. To be honest, potato is pretty good for most cases, unless you're doing something up close to the lights, in which something like low or medium might be better. The depth setting is pretty self-explanatory, and it's how extreme the effect works. When depth is set to 1, it's more similar to a tile style called tegular, while set to -1, it's similar to something called lay-in. Using generated just simply refers to what vector is coming into the ceiling tiles. In most cases, this won't need to be changed, but if you are using generated, if you see any weird distortions around the tiles, be sure to toggle using generated to make sure you can fix any of those artifacts. The passes panel just stores debug information and the separate passes which you can export on your own. Normal strength and invert normal just refer to the normals generated by the texture, and AO-FAC refers to the AO pass. Whew, that's all the settings in Tasman ceiling tiles. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that I get to see these in some backrooms renders. Thank you!